So, we've got a number 1 deluxe meal. Is there anything else I can get you?
Yeah, I'd also like a good night's sleep. Maybe something like the I didn't struggle all night with my uncomfortable CPAP mask.
Sir, I think what you're looking for is Inspire. It's an implant that works inside your body to treat sleep apnea without a CPAP.
Come on!
He sounds hangry. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you, and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on this Friday morning. We are on the cusp of SEC Media Days, as that'll get started on Monday. We obviously know South Carolina will be speaking at the end of Media Days on Thursday, as Shane Beamer and company will take the podium between Ole Miss and Tennessee. One of the people that's going to be speaking for South Carolina is, of course, quarterback Spencer Rattler. And as we start our conversation today, Chris sent me this list a couple of minutes ago. The great Phil Steele, the guru of college football, he has ranked South Carolina's quarterback room as the 7th best in the entire country.
Yeah, not bad. And this is something we've talked about a lot. You know, you feel good about Spencer Rattler coming back for year 2 at South Carolina. With look at some of the things he did last season, you look at his talent level, but then some of the other guys that are in this room too. Your backup coming into the season, at least the presumed backup right now, was Luke Doty, who's been around this program a long time, who has starting experience, who's also a talented guy, a dual threat guy. And then some of the youngsters that are on the roster too, especially Lenora Sellers, who has made a lot of waves since arriving early in January. Tanner Bailey, even dating back to last season, you know, you continue to hear good things about. So, you know, there's some depth in this room. Some of it's unproven, right? I mean, Lenora Sellers hasn't taken a snap. Tanner Bailey's not an experienced guy. Luke Doty has played. Spencer Rattler's played. But there's some guys in that room who carried a pretty high profile during the recruiting process or were highly thought of and have already shown some really good things early in the program.
I mean, I think we got to remember, too, how rare it is to actually have some QB depth in the transfer portal era. I mean, you know, I think obviously you know what you have coming back in Spencer Rattler to an extent, and he's trying to sort of channel what he did last year and kind of channel the last 3 games into obviously an even bigger season overall this year. But I think for South Carolina to have the luxury of Luke Doty as your backup, to have the luxury of Lenora Sellers, Tanner Bailey pushing behind them. Shoot, man, not even mentioned here, the luxury of DeCarrion Joyner as an absolute kind of, I want to say emergency option, but look at what he did against North Carolina when the 2 teams played in 2021. So as far as having options at that position and guys that could go give you a chance, I mean, it really, it's not surprising to me that it's a top 10 quarterback room for South Carolina, because just very few, there's a lot of teams out there that maybe look really good on paper, but are going to bed at night, putting their hands together, praying their quarterback is able to stay healthy, because their entire dynamics would change if they had to go to the next guy, because so many quarterbacks, if they're not playing, they're transferring. So you have this big gap between starter, and then usually it's at the Power 5 level, it's some fairly highly recruited but yet to be proven young quarterback who's having to kind of step into that backup role. So I think if you're South Carolina, you feel as good as anybody out there. You look at some of these rooms, even looking at it from the context of a quarterback room or unit, they're still being held up by, hey, this room has Caleb Williams. This room has Drake May. I think for South Carolina, yes, it's being propped up by Spencer Rattler, but you have some depth to work with there.
And speaking on that depth, what Beamer and staff have done over these past couple seasons and extending on into these next couple of years is exactly what you obviously need to do with your quarterback, and that's usually bringing in at least one every single year, whether that be from the transfer portal or from the recruiting cycle. You obviously bring in Spencer Rattler last year. You bring in Lenora Sellers this year. Dante Reno's on the tape, or is obviously going to be coming in for next year's class. And Terry and I talked about Ryan Montgomery, a quarterback for the 2025 class that was recently on campus and visiting, and we don't know if we're going to get him or not, but it's still falling in line with getting a quarterback every single year to build that depth, because, of course, in the transfer portal era, you can almost assume you're almost guaranteed to lose one, maybe two every single year, which we did see with Brayden Davis leaving a couple weeks ago. You have to keep continuing to fill that quarterback room so you do have that depth as the years go by.
Yeah, but I think the key for South Carolina has been that you kept a guy like Luke Doty in the room. And the schools right now that sit there and are worried about their depth, they probably have their version, most of them, of Tanner Bailey and Lenora Sellers, who have kind of stuck around and hung out on campus. But to me, the secret is that they've been able to keep Doty and keep now an upperclassman sort of veteran guy as far as backups go, and keep him in the fold and keep him in the mix. And even when you take a quarterback every year, I feel like that's what everybody does these days. They try to take a quarterback every year. You want a upper level guy if you can get it. You certainly will take a guy, period, every year, I think. But when you have that sort of backup guy transfer out because he wants to go play somewhere else, it leaves that gap in your depth chart. And that's why I think this is kind of such a unique situation for South Carolina going into this year, is Doty is kind of that missing piece for some other schools, I think.
Yeah, and it's a great point about, you look at this list that Phil Steele's put together, it's a mix of a lot of the schools that are here in the top 10 are in, no surprise, because not of their depth, but because of their starters. Some of them have a mix, like Washington, for instance, is interesting because you've got Michael Penix Jr., who's originally at Indiana, and his backup is Dylan Morris, who's played college football. He's been around a while. But you look at North Carolina, who has Drake May, who's outstanding. They're number 4 on this list. And to illustrate the point, in On 3's version of Phil Steele's list, where they're kind of adding some context, they don't even mention a backup. So you're talking about the quarterback room, but you're literally only talking about the starter. That speaks to how good Drake May is. But then you start digging into the depth. And from what I'm seeing, you got a lot of young guys. You got Connor Harrell behind him, who's a redshirt freshman, has never taken a snap. Tad Hudson, who's going to be a true freshman. And then you got a couple guys behind him who have been in the program a while, but you have a combined 1 pass attempt between them. So I think behind Drake May, you don't have anybody with any meaningful game experience. At South Carolina, Luke Doty has some meaningful game experience. And then you've got some other guys who don't, but were highly regarded prospects. So I think, you could even argue, hey, maybe South Carolina should be a little higher on this list. By the way, Southern Cal, number 1. They have a couple big-time guys behind Caleb Williams, too. You win the Heisman, You got a Heisman-winning quarterback on your roster. You probably deserve to be number one going into the season, particularly when you got some highly rated guys behind him. Washington, Oregon are 2 and 3. South Carolina will actually see 3 teams this season that have, per Steele, 3 of the top 10 quarterback rooms. Of course, North Carolina, they'll see first. Also got Joe Milton in Tennessee. They have a 5-star freshman right behind him. And then Mississippi State with Will Rogers, who has Vandy transfer, Mike Wright, who we all saw last season. Ole Miss and LSU also on there, but the Gamecocks will not see them this season. So it's an interesting list. I certainly agree with South Carolina being in the top 10. I think it's interesting that they're in it and speaks to the depth that they've been able to put together.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the likes of Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU, those are the 3 teams actually behind South Carolina on that list in spots 8 through 10. So pretty high regard to be thought of as having better quarterback rooms than some of those schools as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this list, obviously, I think with Southern Cal at 1, that makes a lot of sense. You've got Caleb Williams, but then several opponents that you're going to have to deal with, Arkansas 5, Tennessee 6, Mississippi State 8. And, I think in terms of Drake May and Rattler, you can already see the storyline sort of being built out that this is going to be a matchup that's talked about as 2 top quarterbacks going into that one as South Carolina moves forward and sort of closes in on this matchup. Chris and I actually had the chance to talk to Rattler yesterday. That'll be coming out. Garnet Trust folks already have that, I believe, Chris.
They do.
If you're a Garnet Trust subscriber, you already have that. We're going to have some stuff coming out on that here soon, but you could tell, there was no bulletin board material, but you could tell there's some juice about opening up with a school like North Carolina and a quarterback like Drake May on the other side for South Carolina.
And didn't Josh Simon, when we interviewed him on the Garnet Trust Hour here the other day on 107.5 The Game, I think he mentioned that he and Spencer were similar and that they both have a chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. Spencer, I think, has had that. I think maybe even more so coming into this season, guys. Here's some more material for him. So Phil Steele put out another list recently. The top 10 draft-eligible quarterbacks. Of course, Spencer Rattler, definitely draft-eligible. Y'all think he made the list? I probably ruined my...
I think you
did not.
He did not. He did not make this list. He was not in... He listed 10. He was not in there. Number 1 is Drake May over Caleb Williams, actually. Who do y'all think was number 3? Any guesses? I don't think y'all have seen this list.
I'm not.
You're not going to get it. Just give it up.
Penix?
Nope. Penix is not on the list at all.
Joe Milton?
Joe Milton is on here. He is not number 3.
Jaden Daniels.
All right.
Penix is he just not, is he supposed to be like more of a college?
Like a college player.
Yeah,
I think
he's
so.
a great player, though.
He is a really good player. Number 3 for Phil Steele, Riley Leonard from Duke.
Oh,
very interesting. Over Quinn Ewers, over Bo Nixon, over Joe Milton. Last season, though, that guy had a really good year. Almost 3,000 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, rushed for 700 yards and 13 scores. Not a lot of people, but Mike Elko did a really good job at Duke last year. Riley Leonard, a big part of that. But yeah, Spencer Rattler not on here. Michael Pratt from Tulane, Jordan Travis, Devin Leary from Kentucky, NC State transfer, and Austin Reed from Western Kentucky. That's your 6 through 10. So Rattler doesn't sneak in the back end of that list either. So
he's essentially saying at best a late round pick, possibly an undrafted free agent, where he stands right now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many quarterbacks got drafted last season, but I think it would put him in the territory of that. And I'm sure he'll reassess this a preseason list. There's a lot of really good players and pro prospects on this list too. I just thought it was interesting, the disparity between the quarterback room and Rattler being a huge part of that, and then not being in this top 10 draft eligible quarterback list.
Yeah, and I think here's the thing, man. Spencer has the possibility to, at the end of this year, people will be talking about him. You're a top. I mean, where's the ceiling on this thing? Like I don't think they're going to be talking top 10, but it's the ceiling for Spencer is still way, way, way up there if he has a huge year. then, but unfortunately for him, the floor is kind of low as well. Like there's a wide range. Like, so Drake May, at this point in his career, he would have to royally screw things up. Caleb Williams have to royally screw things up to not be a super high draft pick. For Spencer, it is going to entirely depend on what happens over the next 5 months as far as what he is going to be and where he's going to be projected.
So I'm glad you guys brought this up, and we got to run to a break here, but I'll save it for the other side because I've talked about this a little bit this week about what the expectations are for Spencer Rattler from a national perspective and how that might actually end up benefiting him this season. I'll ask you guys that question next. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Just got word, guys. A week from today, next Friday, we're going to be out at Firehouse Subs in Casey. We're going to tell the people more about that next week, but we will be out there. That means giant platters of food for us. I can't wait. Again, more details coming on that soon, but we'll be right down the road from the station in Casey with our friends at Firehouse Subs. Larry Chandler, appreciate his being part of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. And, of course, a couple things we want to tell you about that are going on with Firehouse Subs right now. They do still have the sub of the day. That's $7.99 for a medium, $5.99 for the small. Today's is one you may not have had before. It's the Jamaican jerk turkey. Go check it out. It's really good. $7.99 for a medium, $5.99 for a small. All 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. To find the one closest to you, firehousesubs.com. They have a map. You put in your zip code, put in your address, find the closest one near you. And also, guys, I can't stop without saying this. Pepperoni meatball sub is now back. It is just $6 for a medium. When you order in the app, you got to order it in the app. You can get that at the Midlands Firehouse Subs locations, 14 of them too. Download the Firehouse Subs app. You can already earn yourself rewards towards future Firehouse Subs for free by ordering and getting points on your purchases, but you can get it for $6. The new pepperoni meatball. It's here for a limited time. Go get it. Our friends at Firehouse Subs. That's firehousesubs.com and the Firehouse Subs app.
Up next, a question for Wes and Chris about Spencer Rattler's expectations from a national standpoint. We'll get to that next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here at 107.5 The Game, Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on this Friday morning. Spent that last segment talking about Phil Steele's top 10 quarterback rooms in college football for 2023, South Carolina making the list at number 7. And as we were talking about Spencer Rattler, I had a question I wanted to pose to you guys because I've talked about this a little bit earlier on this week on my own show. You know, when you look at Spencer Rattler's career in college football up to this point, he's always had pretty lofty expectations placed on him going into most seasons. Comes out of high school as a high-touted recruit, goes to a blue blood program like Oklahoma, has a very successful first year in 2020, comes into 2021 as one of the favorites to win the Heisman, doesn't play too well, gets replaced by Caleb Williams, obviously ends up transferring out. Coming into South Carolina last season, the expectation was, okay, one and done, going to go to the NFL after that season as long as he has a solid year. First 10 games obviously end up being a struggle. I feel like once most people had kind of written him off last year was when he finally put together those games at the end of the season where he played his best. Now going into this year, he mentioned him not being put on the list of top 10 draft-eligible quarterbacks, and not just Phil Steele's list. There are several other ones out there that don't have him on their top 10 list either. From a national perspective, because obviously we talk about Spencer Rattler all the time here locally, from a national perspective, I feel like nobody's putting too much on what Spencer Rattler is expected to do this year. And given the fact that his entire college career has seemingly been played with lofty expectations on his shoulders, is it beneficial to maybe have a little bit less weight on it this year?
Yeah, I think so. And Spencer is the type of guy, he's going to put expectations on himself. He's a very confident guy. And he has ability to back up, that confidence. It's not just out of nothing. It's not just a concept. He, even in some of the games where he had some plays that he probably wanted back or some throws that didn't quite hit, you could see the immense talent. I mean, remember, this guy He was the Elite 11 Finals MVP. He broke the Arizona State record for passing yards. He had Heisman buzz early in his college career, right? He was thought, okay, this will be the next Oklahoma Heisman Trophy quarterback. And so he's still, you do see some former 5-star quarterbacks that go to college, and to be quite frank, they don't do anything. And that's not Spencer Rattler. Like, he had one great season at Oklahoma. He had one that was, I think, been a little bit overvalued as far as it being like some quote-unquote terrible season. Like, he wasn't playing terribly. They had Caleb Williams, who's a Heisman quarterback, and they made a change, and that's what happened. It stuck. You know, there's so many things that you can go back and point to at South Carolina as to why there was an end-of-season shift. You know, things clicked. A lot of it was just what they did offensively. They just made some changes there. Spencer played his best ball at the end of the year. So I think the way, when you kind of look at the regional or the national view of Spencer Rattler, you're going to get some of those things that, you know, people who don't really know him, or they're not in kind of the bubble here in Columbia with what's been going on. They're still talking about a Netflix documentary from, you know, what was that, 6 years ago, however long, 8 years ago. They're kind of stuck in that world, and they've kind of forgotten some of the other things that he's already done, you know. And so I think the expectations are lower. You know, the thing is, he has that Tennessee game. That's the biggest one, right? That's 6 touchdowns, almost as close to a perfect game as you could possibly get against a great team, that type of environment, nationally televised game. So I think it reminded people, okay, Spencer Rattler, right? So that probably increased it a little bit. But still, coming into this season, I don't think it's something nationally where people are going, okay, this guy's got, you know, Heisman buzz again, and you're back to that. It's a little bit more low-key going into this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for Spencer, you know, we talked about that chip on your shoulder. He's a guy, I think, sort of does a good job of channeling that. And if they can, I don't think the expectation is to see the Spencer Rattler we saw the last 3 games last year, but I do think there is a certain, like, I would say, switch that got flipped last year that could be kind of copied to an extent this year. And just, it's a different league, it's a different game, it's a different style playing in the SEC versus playing in the Big 12. I think it took a little bit of time to settle into that. My biggest questions about Spencer Rattler for 2023 actually have nothing to do whatsoever with Spencer Rattler. It's things around him. Like, I've got no questions about Spencer. I think we've seen what he can do, and I think there will be some. I think there will be more consistency in his play this year based on what we saw last year if South Carolina can solve the offensive line, the running game, and obviously you got a new coordinator. I mean, I've liked what I've heard from Dow Loggins, but you don't ever know what that's going to be until you actually see it for yourself. So I think there's plenty of questions, but most of those question marks are around Spencer, not on Spencer, in my opinion.
So the word that we've been using going into this year for Spencer is, I mean, we've talked a lot about consistency. So do you think, Wes, that the inconsistencies that we've seen with Spencer, and that can be back at Oklahoma or it can be at South Carolina, are they perhaps more related to just what he was being asked to do offensively? Because remember, even at Oklahoma, and it's weird to say, I'm not making this case, I'm kind of wondering it, you know, oh, well, Lincoln Riley wasn't utilizing his quarterback correctly. That would be a silly thing to say because the guy's track record definitely says otherwise. But remember, there was some talk about from one season to the other, kind of how Spencer was being utilized, like what he was being asked to do. It seemed like maybe it changed a little bit. And now, as a quarterback, you do have to adapt to that. I mean, when Spencer Rattler or any other quarterback, when you go to the pros, you don't pick your system. You get put in your system. Hopefully they give you one where you can succeed. We know that what South Carolina was doing offensively at times last season, not just for Spencer, but the entire offense, they got bogged down sometimes, right? Like, look at the Florida game. That's a great example. Yes, turnovers, but also what the players are being asked to do. The next week, they scale back, boom, 63 points. It wasn't that simple, but it was a huge part of it. So how much, I guess, will Dow Loggins being able to find that magic formula of let's hone in on what Spencer is the best at and that partnership, that we've continued to talk about that. Is that the reason that you feel better?
Well, I mean, I'm not going as far as to say maybe the Oklahoma offense wasn't QB friendly because
No, I'm not saying that either. Just to make sure so people don't yell at me.
Yeah, I can't go that far. I think I just kind of thought we saw a much more sort of experienced, mature Rattler, really overall in his time at South Carolina, but just in the second half of the year last year, and obviously Florida game was ugly overall for the entire offense. But for me, it kind of is more about Rattler. Is Rattler getting hit? Does Rattler have somebody in his face at all times? The loss of Jalen Nichols, to me, you want to go into spring and you want to be answering questions as a team. And what I mean by that is, hey, you go in, this is a concern, but hey, man, this guy stepped up. This guy did this. We feel a lot better about that position. To me, you kind of added a question on the offensive line with the loss of Nichols, because that was a spot with what they lost. A lot of people, were maybe already talking about it as a concern. I actually kind of thought they had a chance to be pretty solid on the offensive line, but losing one guy affects your depth so much when it's your left tackle and an experienced guy like Nichols. So I just think the other sort of variables around him are just bigger right now, affect things more than Rattler, who is an upperclassman, who's shown he can do it. And, there will obviously be ups and downs, but I think he can channel what we saw last year if he gets good play around him.
Seasonal list rolls on. Mike Zenitz from On3 put out his top 20 freshmen positioned to be factors in 2023. Did any Gamecocks make the list? Talk about that next. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
All right, if there's any parents out there like myself, you know that you would do absolutely anything for your kids to protect them and to protect your family, and that is why it is so important to protect them with life insurance. Now, who can help you do that? It's my friend Amy Mason Cup. Amy Mason Cup State Farm. She and her team will help make it easy and affordable to protect your family with life insurance, no matter what the future holds. Amy is a South Carolina native and a local agent. Her office is right off of the I-26 St. Andrews Road exit, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia. When my family was looking to switch and save on our insurance to know what type of protection, what type of coverage that we had, at what price, and for a great price, we turned to Amy Mason Cup State Farm. She helped us do that. Again, she and her team can give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you save, whether it is life insurance or whether it's another type of insurance. She can bundle it all for you: home, auto, boat, business, renters, life, anything you may need. Give Amy Mason Cup State Farm a call today. Phone number is 803-772-5554, or you can visit her website, amymasoncup.com. That's AMYMASINCUPP.com. State Farm agent Amy Mason Cup, Amy Mason Cup State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
What true freshman will make an impact for the Gamecocks in 2023? Talk about it next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5.
For a limited time, Sweet Deals is offering qualified listeners an exciting vacation. Spend 4 days and 3 nights at a luxury hotel in fun and fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada for only $99. Save more than $600. As part of the package, you'll receive $100 in free slot play, a $100 dining advantage card, and each guest will be booked in a suite. You'll be vacationing in luxury that's only available in Vegas. Attendance is required at a presentation for Vacation Club ownership, but who cares? There's no purchase necessary, so it's a win-win. Plus, we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Do not miss this exclusive luxury vacation offer from SweetDeals.com. That's 3 nights in a luxury Las Vegas hotel for only $99. Go to SweetDeals.com right now and snag this once-in-a-lifetime offer. That's SweetDeals.com.
Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Welcome back in to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris with you on this Friday morning. Continuing on looking at various lists as we get closer and closer to the college football season. As I mentioned, Mike Zenitz put out his list of top 20 SEC freshmen positioned to be factors in 2023. South Carolina managed to have 2 of those 20 slots, and probably no surprise here, Nicholas Harbor and Pup Howard expected to be those 2 freshmen.
I kind of did a double take when I saw Grayson Howard because he is Pup Howard, just Pup, in my head now. But I also turned this into, as we always do now on July sports days, turn this into a social media post. Which South Carolina freshmen are you, the Gamecock fans, most looking forward to seeing this fall? You can hit us up on our Firehouse Subs text line for that as well. But based on my first 2, 3, 4 responses, let's say Nicholas Harbor plus who else? Who else other than Nick Harbor? Because every response has been, I'm ready to see Nick Harbor, or most of the responses have. There was a response on Instagram. I just posted this like 5 minutes ago. There's a response already for Pup Howard on Instagram. But, I mean, I feel like on the surface, and Matt actually is well-sourced. Like, he does go around, and you can tell, man, this guy digs in. This is not just, let me pick 20 guys who are highly rated and just throw them at the wall. That would be an easy way to do it. He actually sources it and checks in with athletic departments of what they're hearing. So I think there's certainly something to what he says. I think it's not a surprise because we already kind of knew those guys. I think the more interesting discussion is also who, in addition, should South Carolina fans sort of be looking forward to watching and expecting. That's probably the better word. What are the expectations for these freshmen? Which freshmen do you expect to make an impact, I think? But certainly Harbor, Pup, two easy picks, I think.
Would those have been the 2 that you picked from South Carolina's roster? Now Matt's obviously picking from all 14 SEC programs, and I didn't check to see if he represented every single school in here, but you're trying to spread the wealth a little bit. Mm-hmm. You're looking big picture. Okay, who are the freshmen in the conference? Probably don't want to pick 5 from one school unless one school has 5. But we know that Shane Beamer has said publicly, like, number one, he said, we're probably going to be playing a true freshman at just about every position, if not every position. He's also said Marquis Anderson is going to play. Like, he's probably been the strongest of any incoming freshman about Marquis Anderson playing. Is that fair? I mean, he said others, but it seems like he's gone strongest with Marquis. These 2, I'm number one, I'm excited about seeing them play. Number 2, I do think they will be factors. I think you can make a case that there are other guys that will be bigger factors in year 1. I don't think that's controversial. It's arguable. But if you go through South Carolina's incoming freshman class, I've got, right off the top of my head here, I don't know, 10 guys that are probably going to play. And by play, I don't mean they're going to see late mop-up duty in 2 games.
Yeah, let's first of all, I think the definition of play has changed. Because when I say play now, and I think what you're saying too,
yep,
I mean avoids the red shirt. Plays more than 4 games.
Meaningful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you could actually pretty easily, Beamer talked about it like every position will possibly have a freshman to play. I think you could actually pretty easily go through and on the surface pick out hey, Des Yu is probably going to play at edge. Marky Anderson, we know for a fact, is going to play on the offensive line. Grayson Howard, Pup Howard going to play at linebacker. Zay McLeod going to play on the interior defensive line. Jalen Kilgore going to play at safety. I would dare say Lenora Sellers going to play in some role at quarterback. I mean, you can kind of go through with all these guys. Vakari Swain, that's one, Chris, I feel like we need to dig in a little bit more on what's the buzz, what's the word, how are things going with him. But I think certainly a chance, an opportunity there for Vakari to play as a true freshman. I think that the real question here, who's ready to impact? Because there's a difference between playing because there's opportunity, playing because you're needed, and sort of settling in. Who's the Nick Eamon-Worry of this group? And frankly, I think you look back, the freshmen that came in last year, there really weren't a ton of impact guys. There was a lot of, red shirts. You look at what Nick did. You look at DQ coming out of nowhere, really, from a recruiting standpoint, and being an impact freshman. Most of the impact guys last year were more transfer additions. So I think this class already has a chance to make an earlier impact than the other. And guys, there's increased buzz about the possibility of Elijah Caldwell helping this team at wide receiver. I think that's a guy, probably, if you're going to sort of say who's most off the radar, but is continuing to create buzz. Who am I going to hear about when South Carolina coaches and players start to talk in the preseason about a guy who's caught their attention? Elijah Caldwell is going to be that name, I think.
Yeah, it's a good one. And certainly South Carolina's got a lot of, they got several upperclassmen, that are in either starters or they've got guys in the rotation. But remember, one of those guys who is an upperclassman who factored in, not in a huge way in the receiver room, but factored in with snaps and depth, was DeCarrion Joyner, who's now playing running back. And so once you get past Juice Wells, Xavier Leggett, Amarian Brown, of course, you got Eddie Lewis coming in. And, yeah, you think of Nicholas Harbor. I'm sure I'll just left someone or two guys out probably. But in that mix, maybe Elijah Caldwell, who, of course, you don't play him just for this reason. You'd like to get him some runs so that he's more ready next year. But he's seemingly started to do enough, if the offseason's any indication, once he gets into camp, if he continues this, he's made a case to play some, I think. The question that you posed, Wes, about which guy is the most impactful, who's ready to make the biggest impact, even it sounds weird to say, does anybody make as big of an impact as Eamon-Worry and Smith made last year? Because do any of these freshmen from this list end up starting? Of course, those guys earned it last year. There was also a huge need at safety too. Like It was a glaring hole. There's some holes on this roster. I don't know if there's one to that extent. I see a lot of guys who are going to make an impact. I don't know if that sizable of one is fair yet.
Yeah, and would we have been sitting here July 14th, 2022, saying Nikki and DQ are going to be starters?
No.
For a good portion of the year. We I think we had Nick pretty well scouted out by this point of saying, hey, he's gonna make a big impact. But to the extent he did, maybe not even that. I do think it could be a situation where no one guy makes a bigger impact than those two, but overall you have a much bigger group of guys making impacts. If they're and a lot of it will actually depend on injuries. What spot has injuries? I would dare say, Chris, if you had to put a percentage on it, I'll go back to the guy you said at the very beginning, Marquis Anderson. I think they're one guy being banged up away from Marquis taking over as a starter. And I got to look at him again last month. He looks very fit right now. And this is speculation on my part, I would not be surprised if there's a scenario where he starts to make an impact at tackle. I do think he's a guard long term. We saw him play some left tackle during the spring, but to me, he looks like a guy who's kind of trimmed up a little bit, which could be a sign for him to potentially play out there in space at offensive tackle.
Got a lot of y'all weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line about who you think the biggest impact freshman will be in 2023. We'll get to some of your thoughts coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Hey guys, it is Friday, which means you still have a couple of days to head on over to Gold Line Framing and grab a gift for a special someone in your life before the week is over, because they are open Fridays 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. They are even open on Saturday 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Look no further again from our friends at Gold Line Framing. Owner Kendall Walsh and manager Johnny James, they're going to take care of you and any and all of your custom framing needs. That could be diplomas, that could be original artwork, canvases. Maybe you got a jersey of your favorite player and you want to take that next step, have it framed, have it on the wall in the man cave. They can handle that. They can handle flags as well, because they've been in business for over 20 years. They're at 511 12th Street. Again, that's in West Columbia. They got some great stuff in the store as well. They've got an art gallery, if that's your thing. They've got home decor, furniture, gift items too. If you've got questions, just give them a call. 803-739-1337. They're also on Instagram at Goldline Framing SC. Give them a follow on there. Again, Goldline Framing, 511 12th Street, West Columbia, South Carolina.
Your thoughts on Impact Freshman in 2023 coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5.
How wrestling really works and how you get the ratings. Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson explain on 83 Weeks.
There's no creative strategy that would allow AEW to execute on the mission of being different than WWE. And if you're not doing anything different, you're either better than, or you're less than, or you're different than. And so far, AEW is less than. There has to be something different. And I don't know what that is, to be honest with you.
83 Weeks on YouTube or wherever you listen.
Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Couple more minutes to go. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you on this Friday morning. Let's head out to the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100, to get y'all's thoughts on who you think the impact freshman will be for the Gamecocks in 2023. Brad says DJ Braswell. Nick is going to go with Vakari Swain. Jacob weighs in with Marquis Anderson. And then Brock says Desmond Umeazulu. So a good mix of answers there.
Yeah, all good picks. Bill Anderson, by the way, shout out to Bill. He came and saw us at Firehouse Subs recently. He's listening today. He says that he believes Jalen Kilgore will make a big impact. That's Wes, that's an impressive looking guy, Jalen Kilgore. Great find for the Gamecocks out of Georgia. So is Vakari Swain. Initially kind of a more under the radar acquisition that On 3 was kind of early on in terms of ranking them as 4 stars. They ended up being, 4-star guys. I don't know about across the board, but they ended up being very highly ranked guys. So I like the inclusion of Kilgore. An interesting thing to go back to the list that Matt Zenitz from On 3 put together, mentioning Nicholas Harbor, special teams. Very intriguing to think about Nicholas Harbor on special teams. I know Wes went on a mission, what was that, a couple months ago?
Yeah.
The crusade of making Nick Harbor a kick returner, which I like. But Nick Harbor is a gunner. There's another interesting thought. Ed, I think lost in some of the conversation about some of South Carolina's offseason defections, Darius Rush, for example, you have some holes on special teams, too. You feel great about the kicking. Your entire battery, holder, punter, kicker, snapper, everybody's back. But you do have some guys that you're going to have to replace that did really good things for you on special teams. So this is a spot where whether it's Nick Harbor, Pup Howard, Swain, Kilgore, some of these other guys we're mentioning, out of this freshman crop that's going to play, special teams is another area where they can make a significant impact.
Sorry, guys, I'm just laughing. They got SEC Network on in here, and it's Vanderbilt Day.
What's funny about that, Wes?
I mean, for once, they had some football games to put on there.
What game do they have on?
They have Vandy is beating Kentucky right now, 24-21, with 8 seconds to go, and it is 4th and 11. Will Levis just got
sacked,
nailed.
It was kind of on brand for last year. Will Levis taking a sack.
Yeah, they're about to finish this one off, but sorry, I got completely distracted. I don't really remember what you said, Chris.
Well, I wasn't poking fun at you. I was just pointing out that Nicholas Harbor, you wanted to have him be a kick returner, which is a good idea. But the special, again, like you said, Zenitz is not just throwing things out there; he's sourced, and so him saying that Harbor can make an impact on special teams, that's got my attention.
He's got a drone flying over the ops building over there. But no, that was my three. I guess Crusades were. I'm just going to turn it into Harbor special teams and lose the kickoff return part.
Yeah, just go
so then I'll look like I was smart on that. The other one was, will Nicky ever potentially play a position other than safety?
Yeah.
I think that one's kind of out, but I do think we'll see him play in the box quite a bit. And then the third, which I think is taken off, is Sellers making an impact this year in a specific role. That was my 3 off-season topics that I hit on way too much.
You're speaking at least 2 into existence.
Yes.
Position. Yeah, at least 2 of them. Arguably 3.
We shall see.
If Nicky plays even more in the box than he did last season. Wes is going to be like, he's playing linebacker. It's like, no, he just walked down from safety. No, he's a linebacker. He's playing Will right now just to prove his point.
Whatever he needs to count it, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
All right, that'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Terry and myself coming up next right here on 107.5 The Game.